Today I'm going to be comparing three pairs of open back headphones around €200, €500 and €2,000 to find out exactly what you get at each price point. Is expensive really better, or is there a perfect headphone for every listener? Let's find out. So as I say, all these headphones are open back headphones. They come in at three different price points. I'm going to be comparing both the technical specifications and the look and feel of them, but importantly, I'm going to be telling you how they sound. I'm going to be listening to some songs that I know really well and giving you some of my thoughts as I hear those songs. It's important to let you know at this stage that I haven't been asked to say any of this. These headphones are all my headphones. I am giving you my completely honest and independent thoughts. Nobody is paying me to say anything in this video. With that said, we're starting with the Beyerdynamic DT 900 Pro X headphones. If we take a look at them on Thomann, they are currently retailing at €222. That is all inclusive, so VAT included. Let's take a little look at their specification. So product features, they talk about being detailed, spacious and transparent sounding, with a wide range of applications, blah, blah, blah. Super wearable comfort, hard wearing, sustainable, made in Germany. All of the headphones are over-ear headphones. They're all open backs. They're all wired headphones. Now, these have a nominal impedance of 48 ohms. They are 345 grams, which is quite light. The headphone frequency response is very, very wide, from 5 hertz all the way up to 40,000 hertz or 40 kilohertz. Which is very interesting. The look and feel of them, they look pretty basic, nothing wrong with them at all. They are light, they feel reasonably robust, they don't feel like they're about to fall apart or break on me, so far so good. That is headphone one. As I say, €222, not a bad price. We move on to the OLLO Audio X1s. These are retailing at €539 if you're ordering within the EU or the US. That includes all of the duties and costs and everything else. If you're ordering outside of those places, then I guess there's additional fees. These are handmade in Slovenia, and as you can see from their site, they're sold in batches. They're very proud of the fact that there are only a certain number of these available. They're not mass manufactured like the Beyerdynamics are, where there's infinite amounts of them. Now, the OLLO Audio headphones are specifically calibrated. They're individually calibrated. So they come with their own headphone calibration, and they come with a plugin or an application that you can run these through in order to get the calibration for your individual specific pair of headphones, meaning that you get, theoretically anyway, a perfectly flat frequency response for these headphones. You don't get any kind of headphone coloration or anything additional that you may get from the individuality that you have from the Beyerdynamics, for example. So that's a really useful thing to know. If we take a look at their technical spec as well, so also open back, over the ear, obviously. Their frequency range, interestingly, they talk about 5 hertz up to 22 kilohertz, which is less than the up to 40 kilohertz in the high end that supposedly we have on the Beyerdynamics. So that'll be interesting to hear. In terms of the impedance, they're 32 ohms, so a lower impedance than the Beyerdynamics as well. You get this nice kind of wooden finish, which they're saying is American walnut, so that's a real wood finish. You've got a velvet feel inside the cups, which we also have on the Beyerdynamics as well, as it happens. In terms of weight, these are 390 grams as opposed to the 345 of the Beyerdynamics. So these are slightly heavier, but not by much. It's a fairly nominal amount. These can be run as unbalanced or balanced. So they have a different set of leads if you want to run them in balanced rather than unbalanced. These are currently running on unbalanced, but you can run them balanced as well. And finally then, we have the Headphone 2 headphones from HEDD Audio, which is a German company. These are retailing at €1,999, including taxes. So €2,000, including taxes, which is a lot of money. So what are we going to be getting for the money? let's take a look at the technical specs. So, redesigned AMT driver with variable velocity transformation, exceptional frequency extension. So they've got their proprietary driver system inside these headphones. The VVT allows reproduction of frequencies from 10 to 40 kilohertz. Now that's interesting because in both of the other headphones, they say they're going down to 5 hertz on the OLLO Audios and 5 hertz on the Beyerdynamics. And these are going up to 40 kilohertz in the high end, whereas the OLLOs say they're going up to 22 kilohertz and the Beyerdynamics say they're going up to 40 kilohertz as well. So that's interesting that supposedly the frequency range of the most expensive headphones is not as broad as the frequency range of the cheaper headphones. Whether that does or doesn't feel like the case when we listen to them will be really interesting to know. So, maximum impedance of 41 ohms, which is slightly less than the Beyerdynamics and more than the OLLO Audios, which was at 32. The maximum SPL, we've got 89 decibels SPL for the HEDDphone 2. We've got 101 decibels for the OLLO Audio. And do we have it listed for, and 100 decibels for, well, that's a nominal sound pressure level, it says, 100 decibels for the Beyerdynamic. So theoretically speaking, a maximum SPL, which is less for the HEDDphone 2s. That's interesting as well. They're also the heaviest by some way, so they are 550 grams as compared to the 390 for the OLLOs and the 345 for the Beyerdynamics. So they're the heaviest. They don't have any sort of velvety thing on the inside. They are faux leather, it says, cushioning. How about the feel of each of them? Let me stick them on my head and I'll tell you how they feel. Beyerdynamics, they feel very comfortable. They don't feel too tight. They cover the ears really nicely. I feel like I could wear them for a long time without too much difficulty or discomfort. Let's feel the OLLO Audios directly. Now they feel more comfortable. They are a little less tight actually around the ears. They sit more comfortably now that I've swapped straight from the Beyerdynamics. They sit more comfortably over my ears, and the headband over the top is gentler on my head. So I feel like I could wear these for longer than I could the Beyerdynamics, although I could have worn them for a long time as well. What about the HEDDphone 2s? Let's take a look at these. Okay, so these are, wow, interesting. So these are really, really comfortable as well. Yes, they do weigh more. They do feel like they weigh a bit more as well. They do also look a little bit more silly for somebody like me that hasn't got any hair with the big band over the top. But be that as it may, interestingly, they feel a lot more open. I can hear my voice residually a lot more clearly than I could with the OLLO Audios. I noticed those feeling much more isolating, much more closed off for an open back headphone, whereas these feel more open to the sound around me, which is interesting. They're very, very comfortable. I don't think I would be bothered about wearing these for long periods of time either. So despite the additional weight, they are comfortable. I suppose if I had to pick one based on comfort alone, I would pick the OLLO Audio because they're very comfortable and they're slightly lighter. But in reality, all three are very comfortable, very wearable headphones. You could wear them and work for long periods of time without any issue whatsoever. So based on those, is there a design that I think is better purely based on aesthetics? I think probably the OLLO Audios win on design, although, you know, it's a subjective thing. The HEDDphone 2s are very cool. They're big. They're quite a statement in terms of headphones. So if that's your kind of thing, then they win based on the statement. The Beyerdynamics, you know, there's nothing special about how they look. They're basic, right? So they're a firm third in terms of the overall aesthetic, with the OLLOs probably in first and the heads in second, depending on your personal preference. That's where I would go anyway. So I think now probably is the perfect moment for me to dive in and do a little bit of listening. I'm going to tell you how I'm going to run these three pairs of headphones, because I think that is important and that is part of the process. So the Beyerdynamic DT 900 Pro X's, I'm going to be running them directly out of my Focusrite Claret 8 Pre, which I have over there. I'm doing that purely and simply because although it's not a cheap interface, it's not a cheap headphone unit, it's rather more normal, would I say, than what I'm going to be running the other headphones out of, which I'll tell you in just a moment. So the feed for the Beyerdynamic DT 900 Pro X's is going to be coming straight out of the headphone output on my Focusrite Claret 8 Pre that I have up there. Now you might say, well, that's not a fair test. Why are you going to run one pair of headphones out of one headphone amp and the others out of a different headphone amp? The reason being that if you're a consumer that has these headphones at home or in your studio space, probably you don't have the sort of headphone amp that I have, because you're on a lower budget. So it makes more sense to me to use the sort of thing that you might have in your setup, which is why I'm going to run those out of the headphone amp in the Claret 8 Pre. For the OLLO Audio X1s and the Headphone 2s from HEDD Audio, I'm going to be running them out of my SPL Phonitor X headphone amp here, which is a high-end headphone amplifier. It's a bit more than €2,000 on its own just for the headphone amplifier. And I'm doing that because if you've got a higher-end pair of headphones like one of these two, it's more likely that you'll have something higher end to run those headphones out of. Maybe not as high end as the Phonitor X from SPL, but something better probably. Now the OLLO X1s will also be being fed through their headphone calibration software. Now this is the plugin that comes with the headphones, and in here you can see this is the individual headphone calibration curve that came with my headphones that I've loaded into this plugin. So that is already loaded on those headphones. I'm going to be hearing those flat. You've got different options for how you want it to kind of adjust how your headphone feels, but I'm going to have them flat with the headphone calibration on to see how they feel. The headphone 2s will just be coming straight through the Phonitor X headphone amp straight into my ears. They don't have any individual calibration or anything like that on them provided by the manufacturer, so they're just going to be coming au naturel straight to my ears. Okay, so let's get into some listening then. We're starting with the cheapest headphones, the Beyerdynamic DT 900 Pro X's. I've got two songs pulled up in front of me. They're both my songs. The first is called Cult. It's from my latest EP, Cult of the Lamb, Hymns of the Unholy. It features Howard Jones on vocals, Scott Lepage on guitars, and Mike Mallion on drums. That's the first song that I've got. And then the second song is a song called The Truth, which is from a few years back, which I wrote with a guy called T2, which is very different. So the first one is kind of a metal song, and then the second one is like a poppy EDM kind of song. So very, very contrasting. Let's dive straight in and I'll give you my immediate thoughts with these headphones. Okay, so my thoughts straight away, they sound fine. I can hear everything more or less. It does feel a little bit congested, slightly lacking clarity. There's not as much roundness and thickness in the low end as I would like, and it feels a bit rolled off in the high end, perhaps. Okay, let's hear on the other track.
I don't know why I feel this way. I don't know why I do. The way, it's not because of you. When you ask me what.
Yeah, it just feels a little bit filtered, almost. Not quite as much in the low end as I would like, and not quite as much in the high end as I would like. But still perfectly listenable, very usable. It's not making the songs unlistenable in any way. It sounds perfectly pleasant. I don't think it is overly accentuating or detracting from any specific frequency point. So it feels relatively flat. With the exception of those extremities where I feel like there could be more. Okay, so little switch. We're going over to the OLLO Audios. Definitely these are more isolated as headphones, despite being open backed. They feel like they're removing more of the room. My voice sounds more internal rather than external, which is interesting. As a little reminder, these are coming through their own headphone calibration. So with their own response implanted, if you like, onto these headphones. Let's see where we are. Okay, interesting. So I've got more of the low end that I want. It feels like it's got more of the punch down the bottom end. It's tighter but fuller, and certainly I feel like I've got more of the sparkle and shine in the top end, which I was lacking. But the thing that I'm noticing the most is the depth. I'm hearing the things that are not so forward in the mix with more clarity. The textural bits and the little bits of ear candy that I didn't notice at all listening through the Beyerdynamics. So I'm getting a much clearer definition of the kind of the 3D space rather than just a 2D plane, which is really interesting. Yeah, and certainly tighter on the low end here. I'm getting more of the punch and feeling more of the bass coming through. And there's more crispness like in the hi-hats and the synths. I'm hearing more of that reverb bloom after the sidechain compression takes away the reverb and the reverb tail is coming back in. I'm hearing more of that bloom, which is that same 3D thing that I was talking about in this context. Okay, interesting. Out of interest, I wonder how noticeable it is with and without their headphone calibration on. Let's go back to this song and let's hear if we toggle the headphone calibration on and off. Yeah, so it feels like it just kind of gets a bit more murky with the calibration off. Still sounds nice, but it feels kind of much more like the Beyerdynamics in that regard. With the calibration on, it's like it feels clean and with space. Very, very interesting. So we're going over to the Headphone 2s. So super expensive headphones. So we should notice a clear difference, you would think. Let's have a listen. Interesting, really interesting. So the low end on these, absolutely stunning. It's full but controlled, nice separation between all the frequency points, and the mid-range, absolutely beautiful. The vocal sounds absolutely pristine. The high end in these is more subtle than the OLLO Audios. It's there, but it feels less hyped. I don't know whether that is more natural or less natural. I don't know whether that's just from coming from one to the other, whether that feels like it's more and this is less. I'm not quite sure, but it does feel like it's more present in the OLLO Audios. Maybe it's more hyped. Let's check out the other track.
I don't know why I feel this way. I don't know why I do. Honestly, the truth. I don't know why I feel this way. I don't know why I do. Don't know why I do.
Really interesting. Listening with these, it really starts to make me identify the issues with the mix and things that I should have done better in the mix that I couldn't hear at the time because I wasn't working either with a good enough pair of headphones or in an environment that was suitably treated enough. It was before I was working in my studio space here. So this feels like it's opening up the mix in all the regards that I would need to do a really, really good job. Whereas I didn't get that same level of kind of honesty, I suppose, that I'm getting from these. And what you really want from a pair of headphones is honesty. You want to know exactly how your mix is sounding. Cool. I'm going to go backwards. Let's go back to the X1s and let's hear how these sound. Okay, so straight away I'm preferring those. The high end in those is smoother. The high end here feels now a bit more brittle and more present, which coming from those to these I don't like as much. But still sound great. Like if I hadn't had those on beforehand, these would sound perfect and absolutely workable. So really nice. And what if I go all the way back to the Beyerdynamics? Let's check these out. So they feel like the actual driver's just having to work so much harder. And as a result of that, we're not getting the clarity that I was getting from these two headphones here, which is really, really interesting. So what's the verdict then? What is better? Well, the answer is, from my perspective anyway, that all three of these headphones are perfectly usable and workable. And it just depends on your need. It depends on your budget. It depends on how often you're using them. It depends on how professionally you want to be working. It also depends on your environment because, for example, the Headphone 2s, as I commented, they feel so much more open that if I've got environmental noise around me, noise from the street, noise from my kid in the other room, whatever it might be, clients sitting in the room, then that is far less useful because I'm going to be distracted by contextual noise, whereas that is more isolating than those, and that will be better in that instance. But, you know, but if I am just a hobbyist working at home for my own projects, I don't need to be spending 550 euros on a pair of headphones when I could spend 222 as they were at the time of making this video. So, you know, it's a real horses for courses kind of thing. So I suppose then the question that we have to ask is, why is there such a big price gap? Yes, of course, there's a difference in the listening experience. There's a difference in the aesthetic. There's a difference in those obvious things. But what is it then that is making each headphone so drastically different? Well, build quality is one, absolutely. In terms of the price points that they're delivering at, the build quality matches that. These are definitely the cheaper, with a plastic headband. The only metal on them is these bits that attach the actual cups, but they are certainly cheaper. The OLLOs, metal, walnut, you know, feels like a much higher quality product, and the headphones one step up from that again, you know, with these really robust over-ear cups, metal headband, very adjustable as well. You're able to adjust tightness and how this sits on your head in order to make that fit perfectly as well. But then we're also talking about the actual drivers inside. HEDD Audio have their own proprietary AMT driver, they call it, which is, you know, super clear, and I believe that is a very similar driver to what they have in their actual loudspeakers as well. So you're getting a real high-end driver with a lot of definition and clarity, which is important for a high-end headphone, obviously. You've also got to think about brand positioning. You know, each one of these headphones is targeting a different slice of the consumer marketplace. Beyerdynamic with these headphones is not targeting necessarily professionals like me sitting in their lovely recording studio. They're targeting more the sort of home user type client, whereas OLLO Audio and HEDD Audio certainly are trying to target people like me with a higher end, more premium product that is going to enable me to do my job better. If I'm just a hobbyist sat at home, then I don't need to be spending 500 euros, 2,000 euros. So, quick summary then. I'm not going to sit here and say this headphone is the best, because it is entirely dependent on the use case. If you're a professional, if you're using headphones every day to check mixes, then these are the best, right? They sound the best, but they are 4 times the price of the next best. If you are beyond a hobbyist, but you're not a professional, then you may want a pair of headphones that sounds and feels better than the Beyerdynamics, in which case the OLLO Audios are the best. They're a brilliant sounding pair of headphones. They're really comfortable. They're better than the Beyerdynamics. But if you're just a hobbyist, just starting to learn to mix, just starting to understand how to hear things in a mix, then you're not going to benefit from the additional quality of the higher end headphones. The Beyerdynamics are therefore the best. So you have to assess the equipment that you buy and the money that you invest in that equipment dependent upon your individual circumstance. Any 3 of these is a great choice of headphone dependent upon what your actual circumstance is, what your need is. So if you found value in this video, I'd be really grateful if you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and drop me a comment down below. Have you got a great pair of headphones that you would recommend to people? Or have you tried a pair of headphones that you think sounds absolutely rotten, and why? Let me know what you think of the headphones that you're using, and anything else that you're looking to change to, perhaps. Other than that, I'm going to wrap up here. Thanks so much for checking this video out, and I'll be back for you very, very soon.